You could stick me on an island in the middle of the ocean. You know those cartoon islands with the little like one coconut, palm tree and the person that's sitting underneath it, and I would still be embarrassed to pray, right? It had nothing to do with other people. It had to do with a broken relationship with prayer and ego and God, right? It had to do with this built up fear and this built up resistance that it was like totally unearned. Like there was no reason. It was like my absolute utter defiance. It was, what's the AA saying, right? Contempt prior to investigation. Like I had built up this massive contempt. When I actually started to try it, when I actually started to define my own higher power, and it didn't look anything like anyone else's around me, when it was my own relationship with my own higher power, I got the benefits like immediately. It just opened up a whole new world of comfort that today I couldn't live without.
I heard it through the grapevine. Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hey, Don. Hey, everybody. I'm Sam, an alcoholic in Palm Springs, California.
Hiya, Sam.
What's up, Mr. Donnie?
You still going to those A&A meetings?
A&A meetings. I do still go to those A&A meetings, but I don't go because I have to go. I want to go.
That's that trick thing that they say to newcomers. How long do I have to go to these A&A meetings? You have to go till you want to go.
It's true. I heard that more than once.
Yeah, it does work. Well, we had a workshop this past weekend. It was a district workshop. I was able to help be involved of putting it on. And we had a panelist, and we were talking about the home group. What's the difference between a home group and a meeting?
And we could have a whole episode on that, right?
Oh, definitely you can. Well, there was one thing that one guy was talking about who got sober 35 years ago in Long Island. And there they have commitments where a group makes a commitment to bring speakers to another group.
Cool. Okay.
He said all the groups are organized that way. This was back before cell phones and internet. So what they would do is once every 3 months have a scheduling meeting where all the groups would get together. Then nobody could make any scheduling decisions or make any plans until the bell rang. And the bell rings, and then he said it was like the stock market.
Well, I was about to say, it's got to be like the stock exchange. It's the speaker exchange.
Yeah, the speaker exchange. And they run around and going, okay, we can give you 3 speakers on this date, and you give us 2. And they ran around and filled their calendars up. And I'm like going, that is so different than the AA that I got sober in here in North Carolina. There's just not that interrelatedness between the groups.
Yeah.
You can see how that would knit everybody together.
I haven't experienced that in my travels, nor have I here in California. Talk about a true intergroup experience.
Yeah. And so, of course, ultimately the idea is when I join AA that I need to feel connected to everybody else. So I thought it was beautiful because it makes that happen. But I've often said the best benefit of having a home group for myself is there's a place where I get out of myself and I'm going there to make AA happen for other people. And then that helps me. And then the other thing is protection against myself, that I can't go, oh, I just want to sit back and watch a little streaming television service tonight. I feel good. I don't need to go to a meeting. And if I've got this commitment that, nope, I have to show up, then that's protection of me talking myself out of not needing to go to AA anymore.
I love that my home group is a home group, not a home meeting. My understanding of a quick shorthand definition of that is that, a group exists outside of its meeting time. And my home group...
I might have quoted you on that, Sam.
Well, that's because I quoted my service sponsor of many years ago. But my group has adopted, if you will, a recovery center out here. And so every Saturday, our group provides a panel to that recovery center. And that's one of the ways that my group exists outside of its meeting time of 7 o'clock on Friday evenings.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sam, who's our guest today?
Don, today we welcome Yosi S. from Sleepy Hollow, New York. Sleepy Hollow, New York. All right.
When
We
I
have
need to have
a
a horse running through here. A headless horseman.
Is that like an addition to the four horsemen? Now we have the five horsemen.
Yeah, it's bad for alcoholics because it's the four headless horsemen of the apocalypse. Sleepy Hollow's not so sleepy anymore, is it?
Poor Yosi. I feel so sorry for him. He has no idea what he's gotten himself into. We have a metric ton. That Don wanted me to make sure I said metric ton of listener feedback
yes,
today.
Instead of bleep ton.
Bleepity bleep.
Bleepity bleep ton. A metric ton's a big ton. Just know that. It's 1,000 kilograms.
And what's a kilogram?
A kilogram is the weight of 1 liter of beer. Or
Wait.
Water, but I don't use
don't the
water.
bubbles make it lighter than water? Okay. We got to get going here, Don. We got a show to do. But first,
The news.
AA Grapevine is excited to announce that deaf alcoholics can share their stories with other deaf alcoholics on our YouTube channel using American Sign Language, also known as ASL. An independent vodcast team worked with the Grapevine to produce these, and to avoid anonymity breaks, AA member stories are signed by professional ASL interpreters. Grapevine has created a new playlist featuring these videos on its YouTube channel called American Sign Language. Search AA Grapevine on YouTube to find it, and please share this news within your AA network.
The Grapevine is looking for stories of hope about AA in prisons and jails by incarcerated members and by those who bring meetings to them. Did you find AA in prison? What is sobriety like inside? Are you involved in correspondence service or prison sponsorship? We would love to hear your stories. Stories are due by November 15th, 2024. Go to aagrapevine.org/share.
Hey, gents, I'm Yosi. I'm an alcoholic from Sleepy Hollow, New York. I got sober on September 4th in 2004.
Yosi, was Halloween a drinking day for you?
Every day was a drinking day for me. Look, Halloween, Hanukkah, whatever, it was just another excuse to cut loose. They were always a little bit of a letdown because I was always expecting it to be like a thing, and they still couldn't catch up.
Yeah, the amateurs come out on the holidays.
Yeah. Before I got sober, I had quit drinking once again for, I think, a run of 6 months. And I was like, it's Halloween. I can try this. I went to the party dressed like a rabbi, and I came out of a blackout dressed like a cheerleader.
Did you ever get the story of how that happened?
Pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, so folks, if you do know that story, write into podcast@aagrapevine.org and let us know. Yosi, we're going to help you piece your life together.
So, Yosi, you were a blackout drinker.
I would say there were periods when I was a blackout drinker. Like there were entire stretches of years where I was a blackout drinker. And then I stopped and I got everything under control for a little while, or, I would switch, from beer to wine, or, I would make adjustments to my patterns.
Well, what happened that took you to the point where you decided I need to do something about this?
Yeah, I could smell myself rotting on the inside. I could no longer keep the lies distinguished from the truth. I could no longer hide my behavior. I could no longer afford the alcohol that I needed in order to maintain my perpetual state of discombobulation. The thing that actually pushed me over the edge, it was quite pathetic, if I'm honest about it. It was my birthday party. I brought them all to a fun bar and we all ordered drinks, and I woke up out of a blackout outside on the curb. sitting on the curb, and my friend was sitting next to me, and I was like, "What happened?" He was like, "Well, you went to the bartender and you asked him for a free drink." And I was like, "Oh man, that's what happened?" And he's like, "Well, kinda." He said, "The bartender told you, look in your hand, you have a free drink." And I was like, "That's what happened?" He's like, "Well, kinda. After about 45 minutes of you apologizing, he just kicked you out. You were just so annoying. He just couldn't stand you anymore." So like I wasn't cool. It wasn't fun. It was pretty
Mm.
pathetic. I went home and I decided not to drink again, yet again.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 weeks later, I woke up floating in my pool with a beer in my hand, and I said, I can't stay quit." And I reached out to somebody who I knew who didn't drink, and they brought me to my first meeting.
I couldn't stay quit. That's our thing.
I quit relationships, I quit jobs, I quit drinking, I quit lots of stuff. I was really good at quitting. I couldn't stay quit.
So, what did AA ask you to do that seemed a bit too much?
I mean, I was desperate. I didn't have any preconceived notions of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had, I think, the same like ideas that some folks have. I thought trench coats and, Dick Tracy, energy. I thought like, old-timey cigars and smoke-filled rooms
It's an
and
old organization.
yeah, I was coming in from a glamorous life of pathetic partying, and I came in with like a pile of problems, like my world collapsing around me. I walked in the door, and on that, I can't remember a thing that was said, but what I heard was loud and clear. All these problems that I had were not the problem, they were the symptom,
Mm.
and that there was a solution to that problem.
So what was the problem then?
I mean, it was clearly alcoholism. It was laid out that I could not drink like other people could drink. I had to make a choice whether I was going to continue to live the way that I was living or I was going to make radical changes to the way that I want, who I was. And I was ready. I was desperate. Does that mean I was like 100% willing? No, of course not. I resisted every step of the way. My first sponsor said, it doesn't matter if you're laughing or crying while you're walking up the stairs, you're going to eventually get to the top. And so I resisted every step of the way, but I did them. I took all 12 steps and I laughed at some and I cried at some and I believed that they were going to work and I didn't believe that they were going to work. But ultimately, at the end of them, I finished them and I stayed sober and I continue to be sober.
What changes occurred in you from having worked the steps that first time?
I had a choice. I had a choice about who I was and how I was going to behave. I was on the beam. What I can say was that over time, living as a sober person, and as the steps evolved and became interwoven into my life, I started to retread behaviors, spiritual conditions. I started to dismantle my character defects or the power they had over me because they're still always there. Over time, those steps, I became a different person.
Mm. The man I was drank, the man I was will drink again.
It's absolutely true. And the things that served me in early sobriety don't serve me the same way today as they did when I just got sober. That doesn't mean that I'm doing something different. I'm still going to meetings. I am still reading the book. I'm still talking to other alcoholics, working the steps daily in my life. I still have a sponsor that I call, but they mean something totally different, right? Like you said,
A different version of you is doing this.
Can you give an example?
I used to go to meetings because I needed to go to meetings. Now I go to meetings because I need meetings. I love meetings. I love my community. Meetings were a desperate grasp for help. They were a buffer between pain, a place for me to meet peers. Today, I have less pain in my
Mhm.
life. I have a really beautiful, strong community around me. The meetings themselves serve a different purpose in my life. I'm there to be of service to other alcoholics. I'm there to remind myself of who my God is and where my God lives. The meetings themselves serve a completely different purpose in my life today when they did when I just got sober.
Yeah.
I always say if I would have gotten everything I wanted when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have sold myself short.
Yeah.
Because what I wanted was that immediate gratification. What I wanted was that relief. What I wanted was community. what I got was so much more. What I got was a connection to a higher power. What I got was serenity. What I got was opportunity, choice, agency. What I got was um, a bigger life with a smaller perspective, or a smaller life with a bigger perspective, depending on the day.
Yoshi, loved what you said about now having a choice in your life. And that's what I found long-term sobriety brings is I now have a choice to react differently to situations that it really seemed like I was driven by my emotions. To be able to be overcome with some emotion and in the middle of it have a choice, choose to step back or pause when agitated and not react in the way that I used. Can you think of an example where you made a different choice than you would have made in your first year of sobriety, even?
Oh my God. Every decision that I make is a reflection of pause and consideration. I am somebody who believes deeply in performing a 10th step.
10th step, continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it.
I look at myself and I look at my behavior regularly at the end of a day, but I do it all day long. I have built in a practice of spot checking my behavior all day, every day, to make sure that I'm the best version of me that I can be, and to make sure that I'm not putting space between me and my program, and I'm not wreaking havoc in the
Mm.
world around me, because it all comes back to bite me in the tush. If I don't behave in the way that is reflective of my program and what I know to be what is intended of me by my higher power, then I I ultimately pay the price, and the people around me pay the price. And I gotta tell you, I apologize to my kids all the time. And I have seen them apologize to each other in ways that reflect the learning that I have from Alcoholics
Mm.
Anonymous, taking accountability for their own action in their lives. And I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for interrupting the cycle of lack of accountability in my family tree, right?
Yeah,
My kids are taking accountability for their own some of the time. Let's be honest, right? They're still
of
kids,
course.
right? But part of the modeling that is happening in their life is coming from the program as it lives in my life, and I couldn't be prouder.
This is that the world could really stand to have humans anonymous. And I'm guessing it's probably safe to say, at least at this point in time, that your children are not alcoholics.
I certainly hope not. My 7-year-old is, I hope, still free of alcoholic
Great.
identity. But listen, it's worth just saying that I'm performing an apology because I've done something wrong, right?
Mhm.
Like I am an imperfect, person. I'm an imperfect human. I'm an imperfect father. And when I make mistakes, as everybody does, I must take accountability for it. I lose my temper. I have lack of patience. They ask me to do something and I'm distracted. There are lots of ways that are not reflections of my highest self and not the person whom I want to be for my kids that I have to take accountability for. Sometimes it's with a direct amends, and sometimes it's just with an amendment to my behavior.
Mhm.
I came into Alcoholics, a person who was just overwhelmed by life and couldn't see my part in any of it. Again, everything that I thought was a problem was just a symptom, and everything that I thought was wrong was actually the reflection of my own
Yeah.
decision making.
Yeah.
It had to be laid out for me through the steps of Alcoholics and working with other alcoholics and with a sponsor and going out to coffee shops where people were like, this could have turned out a little differently if you would have made some different choices. Or,
Yeah.
oh,
You know,
what you're talking about is actually like your fault. And I'm like, wait, what?
it's a
Oh,
design for living that works.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Yossi, we want you to stick around with us and see if you've got anything to add to any of these listener feedback emails that we've gotten. This is from Scott in Panama City Beach, Florida. Longtime listener, Boiled Owl helped me through my first few years, sending an email to acknowledge the amazing content through and through. I love my Monday morning drive to work! Exclamation point.
Nice.
Joke. A genie grants a drunk two wishes. He wishes for a never ending bottle of whiskey. Poof! A bottle appears in his hand and he drinks half. Magically, it fills right back up. He says, "Wow! I wish I had another one of these."
That's one of my favorite AA jokes.
Oh, I love it. And we've also got a hashtag heard in a meeting. If I pray and meditate every morning, I should probably behave like a man that prays and meditates every morning. Much love to the Grapevine team and many thanks, Scott, alcoholic, Panama City Beach, Florida. Scott, those are some. Well, first of all, that joke is really bad. Thank you.
It's not bad. I use that joke all the time.
Don, your jokes are bad too. These are alcoholic dad jokes.
There you go.
And that hashtag heard in a meeting, I think that aligns with a good portion of our conversation today. Yosi, what do you think?
Absolutely. I'd be lying if I said pray and meditate several times a day as a reminder that I need to be a person that prays and meditates several times over the course of a day.
It's the truth. I just do it in the morning and forget about it. There's nothing to it. But the whole point is I'm going to bring God with me throughout the day. And I need to behave differently during that. So, yes, it is what our conversation has been all about.
For me, at the end of the day, this is about a conscious contact. My prayer brings me into conscious contact with my higher power and my sobriety. And as I drift away from my conscious contact over the course of my day, I need to be brought back to that conscious contact. I need to be a conscious member of Alcoholics Anonymous over the course of my day. Whatever it is that you need to do to interrupt that drifting away, that sleeplessness that wandering through your day without consciousness.
Autopilot.
And drinking is all about unconsciousness.
Eventually, yes. What's our next one, Don?
This is from Mike T. in Sacramento. I'm a big fan of the Grapevine podcast. In a recent episode, season 7, episode 7, there was an interesting discussion on activities alcoholics can engage in when we become discouraged in sobriety. There was a reference to the toolkit with suggestions ranging from going to new meetings to reworking the steps with our sponsors. I did not, however, hear any references to the Big Book's suggestion of intensive work with other alcoholics. Working with newcomers, wet drunks, going to rehabs, and taking other alcoholics through the steps has worked much more effectively for myself when depressed than going to my sponsor, therapy sessions, or hoping to get inspired by a great circuit speaker. Self-care has never been a solution to this self-absorbed alcoholic, but rather care for others. Whew, Mike.
Wow, that's and this is one of the reasons that we all are in conversation with each other, because we do forget things, we do have blind spots, we do leave things out. Yeah. And thank you for catching that, Mike, because intensive work with other alcoholics is absolutely one of the biggest things that we do. So thank you.
Precisely true for me. But, one of the things I think about in a meeting, you'll hear, a newcomer come in and it's like, well, here's what you need to do to stay sober. Everyone will say different of all the things that you need to do to stay sober. Say, if I share at the beginning, I'll be so worried because if I don't say everything, what's going to happen? But trust that the meeting's going to take care of it. And so, Mike, thank you.
There's another part to that too. I may say something about this one particular concept or thought, and then another person may share on it, but in a different way. My expression has been, I can hear this thing from 19 different people, and then the 20th person to share it says it in the way that I need to hear it.
Yeah. What do you think, Yoshi?
I think it takes every tool in the toolbox. There are different points in my life where working intensively with other people has saved my tush, and there are points where it took the commitment of returning to meetings regularly that was the thing. There were other times when I had to just be meticulous about calling my sponsor, and there were other times when I just dove right into those steps into the big book, in deep and meaningful ways also. And at different points, the circle fit in the circle and the star fits with the star and this triangle in this triangle, right? Like, I don't know which one of these tools is going to work for me in the moment, but I know that they're available to me if I'm willing to pick them up. And so, all of these are amazing tools. And there's not to say that any one of them is going to work or not work, but you got to just like pick them up and start doing them, right? It's about like that conscious decision to commit to and return to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, all three sides of that triangle. And one of these things, one of these tools is going to hit the spot that you need, that's going to like crack open your heart and your soul, and it's going to like allow that sunshine back into your
Oh,
spirit.
I love the way you talk. I just love it.
You are gifted with this. Folks, we will have a lot more feedback after the show, so keep listening after the closing music. And Yosi, thank you for being on the show today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the Grapevine magazine in print or in the AA Grapevine app. Your support makes this podcast possible.
I'm at the very wit's end. Cuckoo.
Hey, Big Mac, what was your drinking like before you came to AA?
Well, I was a functioning alcoholic. I had a husband who worked. It's really not that funny.
Please listen closely as our options have changed.
Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org, including our app and how to get in touch with us. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to know more about AA, visit aa.org or search online for Alcoholics Anonymous and your city.
That was freaking adequate.
Put that in! Good morning to you all at the Grapevine. My name is Jamie M., and I'm from Buffalo, New York. I wanted to let you know that I came across your AA Grapevine podcast variety hour. It's a half-hour variety hour.
Yes,
This weekend, and it's just fantastic. I've heard several of the shows, and I'm so happy I took the time. I just love the format of a meeting after the meeting. I plan on sharing this with my home group tonight in Lockport, New York, the Friendly Group, on Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. I told someone that the coffee was too watery. Well, I've been making it ever since then. That's from Jamie M. Jamie, thank you. I mean, thanks for making us laugh. We always love to laugh on here.
Yes, I guess you got a friendly suggestion that you'll start making the coffee now at the Friendly Group.
It might have been, Jamie, you might have been voluntold. I love that.
Yeah. I like the meeting after the meeting format as well. Of course, I guess we've told this many times before, but that's how we started our first podcast. Was we were meeting at the coffee shop after the men's meeting on Saturday morning, and we were going, whoa, we ought to record this meeting after the meeting.
We had some great conversations that are lost to eternity.
Yes. Now everything is recorded. Everything I think.
You're not getting away with anything ever again. Thanks for writing.
Okay, here's another one. I've been in AA since the fall of 1978 and got sober January 6, 1979. And I want to tell you how much I enjoyed this week's podcast with Andrew from Tucson, Arizona. Andrew was on Season 7, Episode 10. AA has not always been so open about mental health, even though there is the quote in Chapter 5 about there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. When I was released from the psychiatric ward in January 1979, I was on prescribed medicine for depression. After some months in sobriety, I was encouraged by old-timers to consider discontinuing it, and I did without too much difficulty. About a year later, A new sponsor suggested that maybe I'd feel better about my sobriety if I changed the date of my sobriety to the last time I took an antidepressant. I followed his advice. I continued to struggle with depression, untreated and unmentioned with any subsequent sponsors, until my current sponsor and other helpful folks suggested that I had a real problem with depression. 11 years ago, I was hospitalized with a major depression, and by the grace of God, I did not pick up a drink. I was sober for 34 years at that point. For the second time in my sobriety, I took prescribed antidepressants under a doctor's supervision and began to seek professional care for my other illness. Since that epiphany, an extremely fortunate happenstance, I have revised my thinking and got rid of the old ideas around mental health and prescription medicine. That led me to change my sobriety date back to January 6, 1979. I have since talked openly about my struggle with depression in addition to my alcoholism because other folks need to hear that there is help for those who suffer. I have noted that AA too has more pamphlets on mental illness and also on medication, and I incidentally sponsor several members who take prescription antidepressants. Thanks again for the podcasts, which are the highlight of my week. Don W., Main Street Group in Arcade, New York.
And before we respond to that, folks, you can go to aa.org. At the top right of the page, click the search icon and search for mental health to find lots of resources.
You know, I've heard from multiple people about this since this podcast aired, and I'm glad that we were able to talk about this and bring it to the fore that it's okay to seek professional help for depression.
I'm glad we did this episode, and I love that we hadn't planned to do it. Mm-hmm. I love that our guest, Andrew, showed up with this, and this is what we wound up talking about. That's a God shot for me. I love that kind of stuff, the way it happens. There's so much that Don said in his email to us, and so much more that was said during this episode. So folks, if you didn't hear it, go back and take a listen because it's a lot of good information. And I think the fact that we are so openly talking about mental health care these days is incredibly important. Don, thank you for writing that.
Thanks, Don.
Here's another one. Hi, I absolutely love your podcast. Wondering if you know which podcast talked about the PI/CPC, specifically how an actual AA meeting was brought in for the doctors to sit in on. I heard it, but I can't find it. I wanted to share it with our district PI/CPC because we may be interested in doing this. Thank you. Carrie B. in District 15 of Area 28. Oh, wow.
Well, first, PI, CPC, we in AA love these.
Oh, yes, we do. So PI CPC is public information and cooperation with the professional community.
That's right. No, we cannot find that episode.
Thank you for writing, Carrie. Next letter.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah, I tried, but it's easy to look up a past episode if we have the person's name. Or sometimes the topic, like if it was an Icky Pod episode. But this one was impossible. I can't remember. I can't remember what my wife told me this morning, Sam.
That's because you don't listen, Don.
That's what she said.
But I mean, this episode that we're recording right now is our 159th episode.
Yeah.
There's so many conversations that we've had, and it is hard to keep track of what's been what and when. Yes, we do have scripts, and we went searching through our scripts to see if we could find this information, and we could not because so little of the show is scripted.
All right.
So, Carrie, so sorry we can't give you what that episode is, but maybe one of our listeners can.
Yeah, maybe if you're one of those crazy listeners who's going through all of the episodes again, maybe you can tell us what episode that was.
If so, would you please email podcast@aagrapevine.org. Carrie, thanks for writing in.
Thanks, Carrie. Now we have an email titled Meeting Spaces. Greetings, Sam and Don. I just wanted to comment on your
Ooh,
discussion.
I got top billing. That was awesome.
What you did get mentioned. I just wanted to comment on your discussion a few weeks ago relating to meeting spaces being sacred. I couldn't agree more. I think that even in the meeting before the meeting, there can end up being conversations that are inappropriate, not necessarily for the space itself, but for the presence of individuals who may not think the same thing as the members talking. Early on, I attended a meeting that had a front stoop on which many an inappropriate conversation could be found, whether that involved unkind speech, insensitive jokes, or gossip. Since that time, I have avoided meetings before the meetings that occur outside the meeting room. Not because I'm more righteous than anybody else, probably the opposite. I know my tendency to participate in gossip isn't one of my better qualities. I like the old joke, I don't like to repeat gossip, so you better listen closely the first time. In terms of the meeting space itself being sacred, I think the chairs of meetings have a responsibility to keep things on track. Whenever I chair a meeting, I like to have a moment of silence before the meeting opening in which I ask everyone to pause in silence in order to transition from coming here to being here. Once we're truly present in a meeting, it makes letting the stuff of the world roll off much easier. Thanks again for your service to the fellowship, Brian.
Wow. So first of all, I got to say, I absolutely love that pause in silence in order to transition from coming here to being here.
Yeah, that's it.
I've never heard anyone say that or
Yeah.
anything close to it. I love that.
That's what happens. And
Yeah.
he put it in words very well.
So I'm going to bring up an article from the Grapevine from the March 2019 issue. It's got a pink cover with a mouth wide open and arrows flying out of it. And the article is The Words We Use. Is it time to expand our scope of how our words might harm one another? This article talks about something that happened at the meeting after the meeting out in the parking lot where something was said. It was not appropriate.
Yeah.
It did cause harm. And this article was written by me. I wrote this article at a Area 51 District 23 Grapevine article writing workshop. And when I sat down to start writing, I thought I was going to write about my travels in AA. And instead, this started flowing. It's an important thing about the meeting space, the parking lot, or fellowship afterward. I still need to treat that with respect and capital T traditions of being kind and trying not to be controversial, because that's where we are still people who would not normally mix are mixing.
Yes.
I don't want the words that I'm saying to make someone feel like, oh, I don't belong with these people.
Good point. It's always good to be watching what I'm saying inside of the context of an AA meeting, if it's before the meeting or after the meeting. And that even includes gossip, or that can include my caustic sense of humor. So I can't believe that you were able to bring up such an on-topic article like that, Sam, and I think it's just great that you do. So I'm not going to chastise you for plugging your own story. And unfortunately, I can't plug my story because I've never gotten a story in the Grapevine yet. So.
Ooh, let me polish my nails here.
You can polish a little bit there. Thanks, Brian.
Brian, thanks for writing in. This next one has the subject, awesome! Exclamation point. Thanks, y'all. My Grapevine app informs me that I have 6,337 one day at a times, which I like to refer to as 17 years and change. The podcast and app nicely supplement my monthly old-fashioned paper edition. I have a minor request regarding the use of the expression freaking blank. Would you possibly consider eliminating using these kinds of expressions? My experience is that substitutions like this usually land in my head as the word they replace and distract from the substance. Full disclosure, my brain usually swears in my head when a meeting format invites me to refrain from the use of profanity. I have been shown in the rooms that my recovery message ought to carry depth and weight. This can be, for me, of course, watered down by extraneous or spicy expressions. Thanks again and keep up the great trudge, Jerry T.
Jerry, thanks for writing. You know, I've always liked the expression that I heard, the absence of profanity offends no one. And I don't find profanity offensive. In my personal life, I use it, but I do respect the idea that there are those who are very offended by it. So within the context of AA, I avoid the use of profanity. I'll offend no one. We don't use profanity here. We use synonyms. And many times when we're using it with kind of a blankety blank sense of humor, you know?
Well, and we do have our bleepity bleep whenever a guest cusses.
Yes, which a guest said bleepity bleep one time.
And we said we're going to start using that.
So I respect your point of view, and I hope you can respect mine. We're going to continue to use synonyms where appropriate instead of profanity. Jerry, thanks for writing. Now, I know that freaking is used at the end credits. And one thing that's made me think is I do need to change this from time to time, because even if it's a joke, just hearing it too many times, it's going to start getting on anybody's nerves.
Jerry, thank you. Seriously, thank you for writing in. We really do appreciate it.
We have an email from David E. in Culver City, California. Have Heather back. Season 7, Episode 12, September 16th. This is the first episode I've listened to all the way through in a very long time. Please have Heather back again soon to share more of her experience, strength, and hope.
Wow, David. Heather was fantastic. Heather, you got to call in some listener feedback to us. People want to hear some more from you.
Yeah, we want to hear some more, Heather.
And we want David to listen all the way through to more episodes. David, thanks so much for writing in.
Now we have 2 listener feedback voicemails. These folks called into 212-870-3418.
Hi, my name is Joe C. I'm calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My sobriety date is May 24th, 1983. And you know, you think you never hear anything new at a meeting, but there's a lady at my home group, the Splinter Group from Australia, and she said we must show restraint of pen and tongue and body language. And you know, I had never heard that before, and it is so true. You know, with my kids and my wife, etc. I might be projecting something other than what I'm thinking. That really opened my eyes to that. And that's all I got, and I love listening.
Oh my God, Joe, that's awesome. I love that because my husband has said for years that, you know, he can keep his mouth shut, but he can't turn off his face. And I get it. Yeah. And, you know, and when we're doing online meetings, that's where really, like, you know, rolling your eyes or something like that really is noticeable. Wow, that's a really good awareness to have.
I was talking with a past delegate, and she said, because as a delegate, to learn to listen to people who have different points of view and not express your point of view, but just to listen openly is important. And she said that the way she practiced it was to listen to political news on the radio on a station that was the opposite of her point of view, while looking in a mirror, and listen to it and monitor her facial expressions while she did to practice a neutral affect, to be able to listen.
That neutral affect is unnatural. It is a very difficult thing not to have a reaction to what's being said. That's not how we normally are. So, because normally we're nodding in agreement when somebody says something we agree with, you know, whatever that expression, the body language is, it's there. And so to make yourself not do that can feel really uncomfortable, really foreign. it's the poker face. Yeah, there are times when I really need to be mindful of that. And so does my husband.
Restraint of pen and tongue and body language.
Joe, thank you for calling that in.
I'm an alcoholic, and my problem is Carl. Sobriety date 29 January 1978, and I live in West Point, Utah. I recently suggested to the 12 and 12 step study meeting that I go to on Wednesday night that we use the traditions checklist that was originally published in the Grapevine many years ago to help with the discussion of the traditions, because there's a lot of newer people that really don't know much about it. And then when we do the steps, we read the 12 and 12 and discuss that particular step. And then the next week, we use the book Our 12 Steps and take a story that's been published in the Grapevine on that step and use that as discussion points. Very helpful resource. Appreciate all you guys do. Keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thanks, Carl. Yes, I really like that book, Our 12 Steps. That's the newest book that the Grapevine has published. It's a brand new collection of stories from AA members about working the individual steps, and you can find it at aagrapevine.org/store.
That traditions checklist is also a fantastic resource for home groups to do a group inventory by using it.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling, Carl.
Folks, thanks for hanging in here for all this time.
These are our hardcore listeners. These are real alcoholics.
Yeah, these are the real alcoholics.
They just want a little bit more.
We need some kind of a secret phrase that really dedicated listeners who've stuck around to the end of all this listener feedback. If you contact us, be sure to use the phrase, "I'd never touch another drop, but by 9 o'clock I'd be boiled as an owl," in your message, and we'll know that you're a dedicated listener.
Or not.
Or not.